Welcome, food and fitness lovers, to Tina's Ageless Kitchen. I'm Chef Tina Martini. You might know me as the Medicine Chef. Welcome, food and fitness lovers, to Tina's Ageless Kitchen. I'm Chef Tina Martini. You might know me as the Medicine Chef. Well, today in the Ageless Kitchen, we're going to go for the no holiday holiday. Why do we wait once or twice a year to make a beautiful feast for our family when we can put one together really easy and simple? You don't have to roast a whole turkey to celebrate a holiday, and I'm going to show you a quick and easy turkey roulade today. So first of all, we're going to put our pan on the fire, and I'm going to start rendering some bacon. Yes, who doesn't love bacon? So we're going to utilize that bacon fat to saute our veg. It's basically a very classic stuffing recipe that we're doing today, and that's going to go inside our turkey roulade. Roulade, French word for roll, and I'm going to show you how to make the most out of your knife skills today to make something very fancy and very delicious. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is render some non-nitrated bacon, and that's very important, chefs. The nitrates really greatly contribute and increase our chance of colorectal cancer, and we don't want that. The nitrates are particularly hard on a woman's system, and we know that now. So ladies, make sure that when you're buying your bacon, it's good for the whole family. Just make sure that you choose the organic pork that is non-nitrated, and that goes with hot dogs and all of that kind of thing. So all we're going to do is just slowly render the bacon lardons, and what a lardon is just the little pieces 1/4 inch thick basically of the bacon sliced up, and that's going to make it go a little bit faster. Now while the bacon's rendering, let's go over here to our ciabatta bread. The ciabatta bread really does have a beautiful texture. It has that nice chew, but it's still soft inside. All right, what's a punade? Well, that is bread that's been soaked in milk. And so what I'm going to do is use a little bit of half and half here and just soften up that bread and get a little moisture going. Now there's a couple different ways to use this, and if you're from an Italian family, you know well that a punade is what holds meatballs together often. So it's very similar here, and again, I'm using half and half because we're really going for all the beautiful flavors and richness of the holiday. All right, so I'm going to let that soak for just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and add just a little salt and pepper to the punade, and that way we're getting a layer of flavor in every layer that we build. All right, so the black pepper and the kosher salt, our bacon's coming along here. I'm going to give a little bit more fire, but remember that when you're rendering pork fat or any fat off of a duck, anything of that nature, you want to kind of go slow and let the fat melt and come off, and that way you're not burning the bacon. Now, pork is very high in thiamine, and thiamine really contributes to a very stable nervous system, if you will, and it's one of the best ways to cut anxiety down. We've also got a couple different things here that will help alleviate anxiety. Now, one of them is the celery, and I've just finely chopped it here. You could have thick slices if you like it. The most important thing I want to say before we get to the phytonutrients in the celery is that you want to use the leaves as well. Celery leaves have the most amazing celery flavor. So don't toss those out. If you're not going to use them in your stuffing, then definitely put them in a bag and put them in the freezer for flavoring soup later. All right, so we've got our bacon going here, and I've already got some crispy bacon already rendered. But I want to use that fat again as another layer of flavor. So we're just going to let that go, and I'm going to go ahead and just speed things along and dump in the celery. Now, you heard me talking about the phytonutrients in celery, and here's some diced onion as well. Now, the celery is very high in apigenin, And apigenin is one of the phytonutrients that really helps calm the nervous system and alleviate anxiety. I know a lot of people in our society now are overworked and overstressed. And one of the main challenges with that, chefs, is that we don't sleep properly. So apigenin is one of the best ways to get a nice calm nervous system so you can get the most out of your rest. All right, so let's just go ahead and let this work in the pan. And I am going to throw in our herbs and spices. Now, those of you that are familiar with herbal medicine know that even the dried herbs can have medicinal benefit for us. I've got a little fresh thyme here though, and I'm going to throw that in, and that'll help release all the essential oils. We'll just put this to the back and make a nice area for us to do our turkey breast in just a moment. We've got a little sage. Now, sage is very interesting because it helps slough off extra water from the body. But remember, if you have seizure disorder at all, or anyone in your family might be suffering from epilepsy, please do not use sage in their food. Sage can actually bring on an epileptic seizure. So sage is one of the herbs that we want to take out of our diet if we're afflicted with one of those illnesses. All right, I've got a little garlic now. I'm going to put this in on top of everything because we don't want any color here. If you overwork your garlic, you're going to get some bitterness in your recipe, and we definitely don't want that. So just keep the garlic on top of everything, and we're just starting to sweat it all down. Now I've got a little bit of masala here, and that is a beautifully flavored wine. You'll see that a lot in sauces and demi-glaze as an accompaniment with meat. All right, we've got a little bit of poultry seasoning here, and that's a blend of different spices and herbs, and that gives that really nice poultry flavor. So we're just letting the pan work a little bit here, and we'll go back to our punat and see how that's going. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about using flaxseed in your diet. Now, flaxseed is a phytoestrogen, and remember, phytoestrogen really balances the hormones and protect the hormone receptors. Ground flaxseed would be a great addition here if you wanted to kick up the omega-3 fatty acids. But I want to let you know that if you're going to add ground flaxseed to your smoothies, what you want to do first is mix a little bit of water with that ground flaxseed, and the flaxseed will expand. The same if we're using oats in a recipe, is if we just add the dry seeds or the dried oats to our recipe, it's going to pull all the moisture out, and you're going to end up with a dry, tough product. So if that makes sense to you, chefs, make sure that you hydrate everything before adding it to your punad. The whole idea of creating the punad is to add moisture and maintain that moisture during the roasting process. All right, so we're looking good. We've seasoned our bread, and that way, again, we're getting all of the beautiful flavors. Let that bread just absorb all of that moisture. We'll add our bacon in just a moment. Let's keep our pan working here, and we'll use the egg in just a minute. I just want to show you these mushrooms just briefly. Now, this is a wild mushroom stuffing, and you've heard me talk about using dried mushrooms as well as fresh. A combination of both is terrific as well. Now, I had the dried shiitakes, and we reconstituted those. Again, you always want to save that water because it's got a lot of mushroom flavor. And then we've got our beautiful fresh oyster mushrooms here, and they're so mild and delicious, but the mushrooms add a beautiful meaty texture as well as adding those cancer-fighting enzymes that also help increase longevity. So who doesn't love that? We've got an egg to act as a binder. If you don't want to use eggs, you could use any kind of binder that you prefer. A little bit of grapeseed oil would be fine, or olive oil. Now, I'm just going to whip this up a little bit, and we'll chop our mushrooms. Now, the eggs really are showing a lot of promise in the prevention of macular degeneration, the #1 leading cause of adult blindness in this country. Now, let me just whip this up a little bit. We'll just use our spoon. It's a good idea to beat the egg before you add it to the punad or to anything that you're making, because if you just dump the egg in, well, you're not going to be able to mix it all in there thoroughly. So do take a minute just to whip it up, and I'm going to go ahead and dump it right in our punad. Now you can see that bright yellow, and you'll notice that the organic eggs really have almost an orange yolk. That's beta carotene to help us make vitamin A, but it's also lutein and zeaxanthin. And these, again, really come back to protecting the eyes from UV damage and protecting the rest of our body. So let's just toss that up. And I'm getting ready to get in here with my hands. Now, just because you don't see me wash my hands, Chef, that doesn't mean that I don't. So please know that we always want to work safely when we're handling raw meat, turkey, particularly poultry of all kinds, turkey and chicken, as you know. So just because you don't see me wash doesn't mean that I don't. You make sure that you stay safe in your kitchen. All right, this is really coming along beautifully. Now, what I'm smelling here not only is the beautiful bacon, but also the herbs are starting to release their essential oils, and they too have phytonutrients to help our body heal. All right, let's go ahead and chop up our mushrooms, and we're getting ready to get in here and have some fun. After all, you've heard me say it before, hands are the best tool. I'm just going to rough chop these. And then, of course, we could use the stem a little bit if we wanted for a flavoring in another soup or make a stock out of that. Just make sure that you use a damp paper towel to take off any remaining dirt. We really like the dirt to dinner theme here in the Ageless Kitchen, but we don't want to eat the dirt. So a damp paper towel and or a mushroom brush is a great tool to help you get the most out of the mushrooms without feeding your family a bunch of grit. Now, the shiitake is used in Chinese medicine for thousands of years. And I really want to remind you, chefs, that what I teach here with the phytonutrients is not new. It's ancient medicine, and all medicine did come from plants and food. And we know that from Hippocrates, and we can see that throughout history. All right, so I'm going to add this last little shiitake. And the stems are a little rough, so I would go ahead and remove the stem here. It's just a little too fibrous, and we don't want that on the palate. All right, let's get in here with our hands, and then we'll check back with our sauté over there. Boy, this is looking great already, so meaty and nice. And that's going to hold its texture while we roast, and that's the whole point of using the meaty mushrooms as well as the ciabatta bread. If we use something that's a little softer as far as the bread goes, make sure that you toast it up so that it'll hold its texture. All right, we're getting close to looking like stuffing here, chefs. I'm going to go ahead and add in the already rendered bacon, and that's going to give a great crisp. You hear me talk about it time and time again. We like a lot of texture on the palate. All right, so the bacon's going to add crispiness. The mushrooms are going to add a meaty texture. And the ciabatta bread, as you see, is still holding its shape a little bit, but it's nice and moist from that half and half, or our punade. All right, so that's all set. Let me wipe these hands up a little bit here. And we'll go back to our pan for just a moment. We're going to deglaze the pan with a little marsala wine. Now, that's a chefy term, and I do like to help you with this show to think like a professional chef. All right, so the fat's starting to come off and coat the vegetables, and we're just going to let that go a little longer. But just for time's sake, I'm going to go ahead and add the marsala wine, and you can get up all the nice bits. Let's turn up the heat a little bit and get that working. All right, now the aromas are really smelling like the holidays. We're going to go ahead and finish up our stuffing, and when we come back, I'm going to show you a nice knife trick to make a turkey blanket, and we're going to put our cooled stuffing, never hot stuffing, in our turkey, roll it up, wrap it all in a bacon blanket, and into the oven it goes to roast. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, and we're going to do a couple things at once now. I'm going to make a cherry chutney, and I am going to use dried cherries, a great accompaniment to anything you may be preparing as an entree, perfect to glaze tempeh or beautiful with a pork roast, whatever you like. Now we're going to start with some dried cherries, and dried cherries are the #1 dried fruit on the ORAC scale, and that's how we measure the scale of antioxidant power. Cherries, again, are the #1. Now, here's a couple things about cherries that you may not know. You've heard me say before, the color of blood in fruits and vegetables means that it actually purifies the blood. So we've got two things here that are the color of blood, and that would be some red wine. So this is going to be the base for our chutney. So I'm just going to add that into our already heated pan, And you've heard me say it many times before, chefs, that we always want to have our pans waiting for us. So the red wine is loaded with bioflavonoids to turn back the aging clock, lower cholesterol. It helps lower the blood pressure. Also, the dried cherries contain anthocyanins. Anthocyanins really help strengthen the vascular system, and specifically the vascular system inside the heart. Now, I'm going back and forth between the red wine and the cherries because they really work synergistically together, and that's what we want out of our food. So the red wine with its resveratrol does three things for us, and we've talked about it before: the fat burning capability, the oxygenation of the blood, and it also has been shown to increase longevity. It's a big part of the Mediterranean diet. Now, the cherries with their anthocyanins, again, they strengthen the vascular system and specifically inside the heart. But here's another interesting fact about the cherries. For some reason, and we're not really sure why yet, they target the vascular system inside the feet. So we really need to protect those feet from damage. That's where neuropathy and things come into play in the feet, that numbness and tingling. Well, the cherries are going to be a great weapon against that. So what we're going to do is just start cooking those cherries in the wine. I'm going to add a little bit of a vanilla bean that we've already used. So I've taken the pods out for another recipe, but remember, these are very expensive, so we don't want to throw them away. You can either infuse sugar or you can infuse your chutney. So I've got a couple leftover pieces here. Let me get this other one out. And we're just going to throw these pieces right in, and that's going to give that beautiful, sexy aroma and flavor of the vanilla. I've got our omega-3 killers here. The omega-3 really high in nuts. As a matter of fact, the walnut is the highest in omega-3 fatty acids. It's a great weapon against inflammation. It calms the brain. It increases our brain power and our memory. And if you look at a walnut, especially a whole walnut, and I don't have a real good example, here's one right here. It actually looks like the human brain. So that really tells us a lot about the power of the walnut. I'm just going to put those right in, and that's going to give us a little crunch and a little more texture, as well as some great nutrition. All right, we've got our anxiety calming celery, and we talked about that when we were making our stuffing. Apigenin is showing up on the research profile as the #1 way to prevent and possibly cure ovarian cancer, so says Harvard School of Medicine. So this is all great news, lots of great stuff happening. Now, I want to put a little bit of antibiotic in our chutney. What? Antibiotics in our chutney? No, that's not what I mean. I mean Mother Nature's antibiotic, cinnamon and nutmeg. And what these do is help to keep the bacteria off of the mucal tissue. And as we know, cinnamon and nutmeg really, again, help calm inflammation. And as far as we're showing in research, almost every disease we know of is connected to inflammation. All right, so I'm just going to grate a little bit of that nutmeg in with one of my favorite tools, the microplane. Started out in the woodworking shop and ended up in the kitchen. You got to love that. So let's go ahead and make some room for the star of the show, and that's the turkey and the bacon blanket. Yes, you heard me, a bacon blanket. We're going to put our turkey on that in just a moment. Now, we've got our chilled, completed stuffing, and remember, chefs, don't put hot stuffing in your cold bird. That's going to breed bacteria like mad. So I'm just going to take this off and make sure that you've patted that dry. We'll move this to the back, and then we're going to practice our knife skills. So we're going to look at the grain of the turkey, and we can see that it's running this way. And our goal is basically to make a turkey blanket. So we're just going to use our knife and make an incision there. Hold that tip down, and then just run the knife right through the turkey breast. There we go. And we're going to open that just like a flap. Okay, now we've got our turkey ready to go. Now you could pound this out a little bit with a meat mallet, but you can see that that's made basically a turkey blanket. All right, spread that out. And let's go ahead and get our stuffing. I'm just going to loosen this up a little bit. You don't want it packed too tightly because then it becomes tough. All right, let's go ahead and just move this in and pat it down. You're covering the whole turkey, and then just leave a little border there and just roll the whole thing. So pull it towards you. Make sure the stuffing stays inside. I know it looks messy now, but it's going to be fine when we put it all together. So just roll that up and tuck the ends in. Beautiful. And then we're just going to drape that in our bacon blanket. Here we go. And just wrap that around and tuck it in. So just keep wrapping the turkey all the way around with the bacon blanket. Let's get this out of the way so I can have a little more room to work. All right, so we're just going all the way around, and then we're going to put that on our rack. Pick your roulade up, take it over and put it on your rack, tuck everything in. All right, so our beautiful turkey roulade is ready to go into the oven. The cherry chutney is almost finished, and we'll be right back with a sweet treat, a candied spiced pumpkin seed. All right, it's time for something a little different, a sweet treat for the family that's also going to have a lot of phytonutrients packed into it. We're working with pumpkin seeds today, and pumpkin seeds really, again, have that essential fatty acid. So we're going to just put some raw pumpkin seeds into an egg wash that's seasoned with the spices and sugar that you like. All right, I've got an egg white here, and remember that eggs really are a great, perfect food. So let's go ahead and whip the egg white up, and you don't have to whip it up to a meringue. Just get it nice and frothy, and we'll put some of our vegan molasses sugar in and just kind of work that around in the egg white. I've got some cinnamon, I've got some nutmeg. All right, so a little pinch of salt will help our sweet things to lift the flavor and have even more great flavor with our finished product. So I'm just gonna put our pumpkin seeds in, and all we wanna do is just mix them around so they're bathed in the egg white and the sugar. Here we go, onto the cookie sheet. We've got the oven at about 325. Now you're gonna have to keep an eye on this, chefs. We don't wanna burn the seeds, but we do want them nice and toasty. So just spread this out on the sheet pan, and then we're going to pop them in the oven for about 20 minutes. And when we come back, our turkey should be finished, and we'll put it all together. All right, chefs, we're back in the Ageless kitchen with our no need to have a holiday feast. Now you can see how beautiful the turkey roulade has come out, and we're just gonna let that rest for a minute so that those juices stay in the meat, and then once you slice it, you're gonna have that beautiful mushroom stuffing inside. Remember, the turkey's loaded with tryptophan, and everybody knows that. It's an amino acid that helps the body to build protein. Now, it also helps us to sleep better, and that brings us to our cherry chutney. Cherries also help us to sleep better, and they also improve the health of the vascular system. We've got our omega-3 fatty acids and a great source of protein as well with our walnuts. So remember that the cherries were in the base of red wine, and resveratrol has got to be one of my favorite phytonutrients. It helps us to burn body fat, live longer, and have great heart health. Now, the pumpkin seeds, really great just to put out for a healthy snack. Pumpkin seeds really focus on something called prostaglandins, and that helps everybody maintain a great sex drive. Yes, everybody. It's one of the best ways to boost testosterone in our men, and really it's got to be one of the top foods for boosting the libido in both men and women. You've got to love a beautiful holiday feast that's good for everyone and helps us feel just a little more frisky. Well, I hope that gives you a reason to celebrate a no holiday and prepare a feast that's not only delicious, beautiful on the eyes, but great for your health. Well, that's it for this week. I'm Chef Tina Martini. I'll see you next time from the Ageless Kitchen. Here's to your health.